Guys, thank you so much for watching Tommy Untamed, and we got a great show today with my buddy David Gosselin. I gotta do an intro because I have a production team. It's a good problem to have. Monday, March 24th, 2025, 1:34 p.m. Eastern Time with my buddy David Gosselin, who's been on here several times before. If you guys go in the description, you can find a link to his Substack, and most notably, he is you and one other guest are my Tim Dillon cult members. I think it was like the first or second time we hung out. You were like, you watch Timothy Dillon? And I was like, I do. And then I had on a buddy who was doing like relief for Hurricane Helene. And I think I mentioned Ray Kump, which is even more esoteric. And he was like, do you listen to Ray Kump and Tim Dillon? And I was like, yes, I do. So those are my cult members, David and Derek. But yeah, dude, how you been?
I've been good. I've been good. I mean, we're in interesting times, and yeah, it seems like people are losing their heads as usual. But yeah, things are changing, and at the same time, things are the same,
Yeah.
right?
To immediately quote Raymond Kump, I'm listening to the old uh archives. And it's back in like 2016 or 2017. Trump just got it's honestly it was probably about this far into the term. And Tim was going, if Jeb Bush had won, he would have taken the plane that is the American empire and would have plowed it right into a mountain. But it would have been very nice. They would have banked it so you didn't see the mountain. They would have played an Adam Sandler movie, comp drinks for everybody. You'd have no idea. It would just be a nice flight, and you'd be drinking, eating, and then boom, right into the mountain. But like Trump's trying to turn the plane around. He's trying to land it. He's accusing flight attendants of sabotaging the plane. And Ray goes, I kind of like the chaos. And that's exactly applicable to right now. There was a controlled demolition for seemingly decades, and Trump, for better or worse, good or intentions or nefarious, is trying to change the direction of the plane. And you know what? I try to come to peace with more and more that this isn't infinite 34. It does eventually end, even if it feels like forever. One day we will wake up and go, Jesus, I'm 80. So with that, I'm more and more kind of leaning in and going, I kind of want the turbulence. I kind of
Right.
enjoy it. What do you think, man?
Well, I mean, yeah, there has to be changes in the culture. It is, keying off of Ray Kump and Tim Dillon. I think Tim has been putting out some pretty good polemics in terms of, scratching his head a bit in terms of what is this, what's really happening with MAGA right now. Yeah, I've been talking a lot about there's MAGA versus dark MAGA, and increasingly it's becoming hard to distinguish the two, right? The whole technocracy has really embedded itself into the Trump administration. And actually, fun little travel story here. I was just in Rome and I had to go to the University of Rome, the archives, to get a manuscript, take pictures of a manuscript for a friend whose ancestor was a minor poet in southern Italy. And, here I was in this stuffy archive thinking, okay, I'm just going to get my pictures and, talk to the librarian in their boring little archival room and all that. But once he knew I was from Canada, he said, "Well, what do you think about Trump wanting to take over Canada?" And that's where I was like, "Well, have you heard of the technate? Elon Musk and this idea of creating a new technate." So
A
he
new
said, "Yeah,
what? A tech what?
a technate." So it's like it's a technocracy.
So okay, it's like a tech state. Okay.
Yeah. And so you see, Elon Musk's grandfather was like the president of Technocracy Inc., a political party in Canada, where the whole idea is that your society will be run by experts, and that will sort of allow us to, cut all the fat, right? Cut all the inefficiency.
Mm.
But, when you look at what that actually means, this is where Tim is like, I didn't think that downsizing the deep state and getting rid of all the bloatedness and inefficiency meant like firing park rangers and veterans. Like I didn't know they were the deep
That
state.
they're the They killed
Right.
Kennedy.
Right. So in that, and meanwhile, so the technocracy, the original map that they had is really all of North America. It is Greenland. It is, all these countries that now, some people think it's like a joke, but it does seem like the empire is really having to reorganize and clean up shop, right? You can't really be an efficient empire if you are too bloated. So they're cutting a lot of the fat, but they're ultimately their goal is to be ready for a war with China.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, when you look at all the tech people around MAGA and you hear Elon Musk talking about dark MAGA, gothic MAGA, it starts to, when we know the history a bit, it starts to make a lot more sense that now, even with in the religious dimension, it's like, yeah, people are like, yeah, people are getting more enthusiastic about spirituality, traditional Christianity, and all that. But I think we have to be careful when we hear the word tradition, people automatically just think, these days at least, it's a good thing, stability. But you have, medieval Christianity, you have the Dark Ages, um, and then you actually have, I guess you could call biblical Christianity, the teachings of Jesus and all that, very different from the Crusades
Yeah.
and all these kind of things. So you hear this from Musk as well, who's echoing these talking points like Christianity has lost its teeth. Milo Yiannopoulos was like Christianity has lost its appetite for war, and that's really what people need to rediscover if Christianity is to get its bite back. So the irony is that's actually not different from a lot of what's been going on in terms of the new age pagan Gaia worship. And this throws people off, but I just point out, because I've been getting in a few spats with some orthodox or traditionalist thinkers, and I just observe that if you think about it, the fat blue-haired chicks, who are all about, going back to nature and the purity of Gaia and, having a more compassionate system, and the Christian medievalist idea that basically Western civilization was corrupted by modern civilization, by capitalism and commercialism. Now, where does that come from? Well, you had science, you had technological innovation, you had the Renaissance, and that rapidly increased the pace of change in society, right? And as you had more abundance, as you had more wealth that was created because of scientific and technological progress, obviously people had a sense of greater security and self-sufficiency. They weren't just at the mercy of blind fate, nature, and the elements. Man had a newfound sovereignty, if you will. And so when you listen to a lot of the medievalist, or you could say dark MAGA kind of, messaging, a lot of it is that, yeah, there was this pure time where man was close to God and in touch with nature. And then came the fall, right? Then came modernity. Then came innovation and rapid rates of technological change. And that has separated man from the divine, from nature. And so there are people, if you listen, they're kind of, it's almost, you have accelerationism, right? This is acceleration supposed to be this really futuristic idea of the transhumanists and whatnot. But yet, where's the giddiness coming from? Well, it's the idea that everything can kind of crash and burn, and out of it, the West will rise from the ashes. But if man is to have this spiritual renewal, you have to scrap modern Western civilization, and you have to scrap the nation state. If you hear Peter Thiel, if you hear Elon Musk, they're very big on the network state, right? Where the nation state is an obstacle to, quote, freedom. And the medieval world, we're told actually people were a lot freer. You know, they were a lot more in touch with nature and God, and they were free to make choices that now they can't. So we're told. But this is actually it's actually a radical, technocratic, transhumanist idea where you need to get rid of the modern Western uh, age of abundance that was unleashed by ultimately the Renaissance and modern science. And at the same time, they're stuck because they need to preserve the tools of power of scientific innovation, but you don't want it to spread among the population generally where people become innovative again and you can't control the change. So they're in a situation where you need technological change and innovation, but you have to be able to control it. And that's where the technocracy comes in. That's where the cybernetics and the radical decentralization of the state, right? So they're really talking about having more. We're romanticizing autonomous communities, much like in medieval Europe before the modern nation state, where you pretty much just had regions, right? So they were more independent. They weren't subordinated to a central government. But these were the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages didn't have central governments. You didn't have nation states. So this idea of freedom, as you hear it from like Peter Thiel, Bilderberger, steering committee members, it's not really libertarian. It's medieval, and this is where you get Gothic MAGA, as Elon Musk has been talking about. So I think people have to be careful. The key to any, I think, viable or good change is you need discernment, right? You're not going to have a renaissance in Western civilization by just going back to, demonology and medieval faith and works, arts and crafts, right? Where the cobbler made his own shoes for the neighborhood and whatnot. You didn't have the big bad corporations like Nike and Adidas. Like, if that's how you're thinking about it dialectically, you're pretty much getting pulled into this dark MAGA or dark enlightenment, right? Curtis Yarvin, who's a guru of this medievalist alt-right, if you will. So that stuff's all pretty creepy. That it's there and it's using the guise of Christianity or tradition to advocate for all sorts of changes, reducing the size of the government. But then you look at what that model was in South America, right? Which is they often run pilot programs or test programs. It's Argentina, where Milei comes in with the chainsaw
Hmm.
and he's basically just slashing everything, downsizing everything, and totally liberalizing everything, such that you're going to have more freedom because there's less government. But finally, what is it? Well, if you're privatizing the military, if you're privatizing all of the national industries, the oligarchs just have more power. There's less oversight.
Mm.
If all of this stuff is now put into the hands of the technocracy, you have less oversight when things are in the private sector than when things are in the public sector. But people are so disenchanted because there has been this parasite, right, that has latched onto Western civilization and has been looting it, that if we're not clear on what the causes are and the motivations, obviously there's a dialectic. They're offering solutions to a perceived problem. But what is the true nature of that problem? What is the basis of a sound faith and spirituality and tradition? Is it really just falling into this romanticization that Tim Dillon will has railed about? He's like, if you go to Ireland, right, he rails against his fellow Irishmen. He's like, Ireland looks the same in 2025 as it did in like 1925. And people have this very strong inclination to romanticism, and like the past has this magic and this mystique that we lost, and now everything is shitty. And so we somehow have to recapture the magic of the past and tradition, and these things will get us there. But if you're not paying attention to what the technocrats are saying or the accelerationists, you might be in for a surprise as we enter like a real post-industrial dark age where you don't really have science and technology available for the masses, right? So you have it for the technocracy and all their plans, but not among the general population will not be able to benefit from the fruits of science and innovation, unless you're willing to be chipped, of course. Then you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be. So I
Yeah,
said a
for
mouthful there, but that's
no, no, no,
that's
no, no. There's a lot. I have multiple different things I'm deciding which to grab on. I mean, just immediately is yeah. No, I mean, and I always rail against this because I'm slowly just evolving into an angry old man. Go to any YouTube video of any song more than 10 years old. The top comment is always this. Doesn't matter if it's Led Zeppelin or fucking Akon. The top comment is always like back when music was good, back when life was so much easier. It's like, no, you were just 15. And that's
right,
fine. That's fine to look
right,
back and go, things were better. But they're not. Because
right,
you can find videos, you can find comments from 2015 talking about music of 2005. And now you go back in 2025 and find the songs in 2015 and you see the people in 2015 saying this music sucked and then you see people in 2025 saying back when music was good. So that doesn't matter. But what you're saying about the about like cutting and slashing is I'm with you. I'm very hesitant to go all in with any one of the seeming like polarities because it just hindsight always shows us that like that's fucked. Someone's maneuvering, someone smarter than you is maneuvering to get from you. Um, on the other hand, I do look at it kind of like whatever the scene from Apollo 13 where you have the people that are in control of the power, you have people that are in control of, the food, you have people that are in control of the thermal panels, and they're all arguing about what they need to do to get Apollo 13 back. But then finally, the power guys stand up and go, without us, nothing else matters. You can't move the panels. You can't move this. You can't radio us. You're going to run out of oxygen. And they finally all defer and they go, actually, the power guys probably that's priority one. You can't argue about what you're going to do on your phone if the phone has
right,
no battery. So
right,
there's like a priority. So on one hand, I do look at like, sh is slashing the government, is that a selfless thing? No, you're going to have all these corporations and oligarchs step in and get their share. If the thing is so bloated that it's adding $1 trillion of debt every 100 days, where it used to take about 25 years to do that, at a certain point, you have to go, yeah, I get Walmart, Bezos, and Elon are going to come in and feast on this thing. If we don't cut it by this time next year, it's going to be 10 trillion. We're going to war with China. So
yeah,
I'm a little sympathetic to that. Like we're kind of in a triage state where we can't, the time for bickering about which oligarchs were going to take advantage of this was like 40 years ago. We're at a point now where it's like, this cannot keep going. This cannot, the rest of the world's going, they're not paying us back. So I'm conflicted on all of that. But what you said earlier about like the war with China, to go back to Raymond Kump and Timothy Dillon, is they're talking about like in '07, '08. They're like, that bailout was originally supposed to be 1 trillion and it didn't pass. And then the one that did get passed was, I think, 700 billion. So I was in high school when that happened. I kind of remember that. And all the politicians and talking heads were going, this changes the scope of the government forever. This is a $700 billion kind of merger of
right,
government into private, and this changes the scope forever.
right,
Meanwhile, several years earlier, $2 or $3 trillion went missing from the Pentagon, and it was never investigated. And by '08 or '09, I think that number jumped to 7 or 8 trillion, and it was just considered like, hey, we're at war, global terrorism. We're not going to look. Even told it still hasn't been resolved. That's like a thing that the meme is always like, Donald Rumsfeld announced 2.3 trillion missing the day before 9/11. I get that that's kind of like your conspiracy, like, but the
yeah,
reality is that it's still never been addressed. And I think at this point, the number missing and unaccounted for in the Pentagon is well over $10 trillion. So my point is when they were talking about '07, '08, we all have this thing where the CEO of Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan are coming out and they're like, we're in a new era of government involvement. Meanwhile, over 10 times as much went straight up missing. Not a bailout. Just went
Mhm.
missing into these black projects out in Nevada, Tonopah Test Site, Groom Lake,
Right.
and we just went like we're not going to address that. And I think Ray goes, that's where you see is the true nucleus. Forget nation state. That's the true nucleus of power is when it goes missing there, you don't ask about it. Hey, shut the fuck up. And that's where I think I said this last year on the podcast is like I can see Trump coming in, winning and doing all the stuff, the border, the Make America Great Again, all that stuff, because the real power behind it is essentially going like, hey, we'll throw that a bone so these people shut the fuck up and stop getting rowdy, stop forming militias.
Right.
Because in the background, the big movements are still happening. Like we're going to war with China. We're doing this stuff. And it's almost like dad will let you eat McDonald's every once in a while. You have no impact on whether or not he takes the new job. Like you're a 5-year old. And what
Right.
you think is big and well, mom doesn't let us stay up past 7 p.m. and well dad said we can up past 8. You have like as a kid, you have no idea about like the higher level things happening and we moved around a lot as a kid. And it's because like my dad was moving from like one company to a company with better pay.
Okay.
My like ability to stay up past 8 p.m. and watch The Simpsons was peanuts. There were bigger movements happening behind the scenes. And
Right.
I tend to look at it as like that's what a lot of this is the real power it is the United States, but it happens to be the United States. It's not
Right.
whatever military, industrial, finance, intelligence complex. It happens to be the US, but it's supranational. And that is what we're seeing. And everything else is kind of like, I don't know, we're bickering down in the fog. And yeah, I don't know. So it's
And yeah, and I mean, I don't say this in a sense that I think it's demoralizing, because
yeah,
the flip side though is that the magic doesn't really have the same lasting power that it used to. When you people the propaganda messages, they go out there and people sort of jump on board, but then it's like after a few months,
yeah,
or
it
like
doesn't run for
9/11.
decades anymore.
Yeah, 9/11, there people are still cheering. Tim talks about,
Driving
the
around.
the flight parades, right?
Yeah.
The aerial parades, and like, it's 10 years later, and like, thank you for your service. And these are people that like veterans who's like that did like the Mile High Massacre or whatnot. But just like this very dopey patriotism, this kind of Neanderthal stuff, really, right? Just very tribal.
2003, fucking Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity, like
Yeah, so now
Patriots live
it's
here.
people still fall for the stuff, but the magic wears off a lot faster.
Yeah.
So the illusions, the magicians don't have the same power they used to craft their illusions, and Tim Dillon has talked about this a lot in terms of the decrepitude of the ruling class. Like, their kids want to be stand-up comedians. Their kids want to like make a documentary, their kids want to get drunk and party. It's not like before where it was these hardened, WASP and OSS families and
And we need that
military.
back.
Well, that's the
They're
irony.
demons from hell, but they fucking got they
They got
guide
shit
the
done.
ship.
But the irony is that I see one of the most positive developments is that basically a lot of what's happening now, that the maneuvering and the reorganizing, is due to the fact that China, Russia, they didn't really take the bait. Like, they actually outflanked the Atlantean sort of model that was, Kissinger and Brzezinski and all these people thought was going to be the thing, which is that China would remain a cheap labor producer. Russia was just, a gas
Gas
station.
station with nukes.
Yeah. But that's not actually what happened. China used its manufacturing base to leapfrog technologically in leaps and bounds in ways that this is the problem with the oligarchy, right? Like because they're so high up, they're so far removed from,
Insulated from market forces.
yeah. And, as Tim Dillon also says, money has an anesthetizing effect,
Yeah.
so once you're in the stratosphere compared to, the lowly peasants just going about their day to day in their local towns, you don't see change. You don't see how change works, and you don't see the rates of change that are increasing. So they miscalculated, and the Malthusian ideology that basically is what I was referencing at the beginning, like this dark age depopulation, pro Gaia, pagan Satanist environmentalism, if you will. It backfired because now the West sort of deindustrialized, and it lost the most important thing it has to compete with countries like China, the BRICS, Russia. And so, once these guys go full nuclear power, or like, fusion comes online, the West is they're fucked. So now they're scrambling. And so Peter Thiel and these types, they're trying to reorganize, and they're trying to, if you listen to Steve Bannon, he was on the podcast, Tim Dillon podcast recently, like they have been studying the real system of American political economy as it was conceived by people like Lincoln, Hamilton, and like the importance of manufacturing. Alexander Hamilton, he wrote like three important reports: report on manufacturing, report on national banking, and report on something about labor. And so, or currency. Idea being that that's your base, that those productive powers of labor are what give the added value to the whole economy, right? They allow your skilled labor to make up shifts, and that increases the productivity. One man can do the work of 100, and that frees people up for innovation as well.
Hmm.
So historically, whenever the United States has thrived, and it became a sort of driver for, Germany in the early 1900s, late 1800s, copying that economic model. Germany became the industrial powerhouse of Europe, and that's why there was a war. That's why Germany was pretty much, they went to war, and they really tried to crush Germany with World War One. That led to all sorts of things. But basically, Germany was the industrial powerhouse of Europe, and because of the railroad, basically the maritime supremacy of the British Empire that had seemed like something eternal
Yeah.
overnight was suddenly waning. So, at a higher level, this was all the result of the fact that there was an upshift in the powers of mind, the thinking of the American population, and the spirit of innovation, which Tim Dillon again rightly points out, the WASPs, which are much more stoic, they're less romantic, right? So they embrace the future more easily, right? They're not afraid of change in the same way that somebody who's railing about the Latin Mass, right? And the failure of Vatican II. They don't think about the same things. So that forward looking outlook was really a driver culturally, right? That then animated the economic innovation and activity. So that's crucial, and that's how you revive an economy. So now people like Bannon, Thiel, they know that. Like they know that the Malthusianism stuff, as it was practiced, has been a disaster because the other countries didn't really bite. China didn't adopt these policies. So now they're stuck. And so that's where I think the opportunity is, where if people, stop being black pilled and realize that, again, as Tim Dillon, Russ Baker, these guys, they all point out, the oligarchy makes mistakes all the time, right? Like they have a lot of resources and infrastructure. So you don't necessarily see them always regrouping, or you don't see all the ideas that sort of You
Don't
know,
take off.
it didn't stick, right? But that happens all the time. And now they're in a doozy, right? Because, and so you see this radical maneuvering where number one, like overnight, Assad's kicked out, the whole Middle East is being like reorganized, and like now Al Qaeda, they just put them in suits and like they don't even care, you know, like it's just hardcore. They're not even saying democracy. They're just like we change. And so that's a bulwark against the whole New Silk Road
Yeah.
and pretty much trying to modernize the Middle East and make it, a transportation corridor, right? An economic activity zone connecting Eurasia. If you keep that place controlled and constantly in chaos, that's already. So they moved very quickly on that. That was surprising. And now you see the technate, right? You see the slime mold being like, you know what? We need to absorb Canada. We need to absorb. We're just going to take over these countries because we need the resources now. Because we need to fire up our
The
industrial
engine.
engines again, so that we can try to enslave China, or at least compete. So there, it's like, okay, this is a lot of change very, very quickly, much faster than anything we've even seen in the last decades, which is saying a lot because it seemed like things have changed so much over just a few decades. But now it's like day to day, China, deep seek, and all that stuff that's making people lose their heads. But they're like, they're actually making breakthroughs
Yeah.
and they're hypersonic, right, vehicles
Yep.
and weaponry that is
It's very
it's
real.
all very impressive. So I see the irony though is that basically was imitating the best of the American system.
Yeah.
Like China historically is a very feudal and traditional state. It's very hard to bring changes to that system. And I just use the example of actually painting and perspective. My friend Matthew Ehret,
Hmm.
who writes
Yeah.
journalist, also studied painting. He wrote an article on Giuseppe Castiglione, who was a Jesuit priest and painter in China, and like he tried to bring in Renaissance perspective into Chinese classical painting to give it more depth and dynamism and all sorts of things. And he could barely get away with even like the slightest chiaroscuro, just the shade. Like the Chinese were like, whoa, 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 what are you trying to
Hey,
do here,
get the
right?
fuck out of here.
So that's
Fucking round
traditionally,
eye.
yeah, and China was very closed, right? It was a very closed off society. And the Silk Road and all these infrastructure programs that they have going in like Africa and South America, it's so there have been very sudden changes, and that's where people, I think that's why people want to come fully online, and they want to practice discernment and see that things are changing in all sorts of interesting ways, and the pace is very quick. So we should set aside our romanticism and our make believe illusions just to make us feel good, Trump white hat QAnon grade stuff, and just be like, no, there's a lot of real politics happening right now,
Yeah.
but it's an invitation for all of us to level up our
Yeah.
thinking, our problem solving, and not be stupid, right? Because things are going to get, they talk about hard landing. So, it's this shout out Toronto Pearson Airport, hard
Oh
landing.
God. Hey,
Thank God Tim Dillon wasn't on the plane.
I know. Hey, tell everyone real quick where to find you. I gotta take a piss. Tell everyone
Yeah.
where to find you.
So, I mean, check me out on ageofmuses.substack.com. And our literary journal is thechainedmuse.substack.com. And I'm preparing to put out a book, tentative title being Slaying Mithra, Magic, Mystery, and the Transformation of the West. So, everything that I've been talking about here is sort of keying off my thesis around the Renaissance, the secrets, if you will, or the magic of the Renaissance, which really gave birth to modern Western civilization. And we can understand a lot of what's happening now as this battle over the attempt to reverse the fruits of the Renaissance and usher mankind back into a new Middle Ages, which is really what the oligarchy has themselves romanticized and longs for, right? We hear technocratic feudalism and we hear all these types of words, or even network state, accelerationism. All these things actually can be best understood from an aerial view as this battle over, as my recent essay was titled, A Renaissance or a New Middle Ages. So that's really what we're doing over at Age of Muses and the Chained Muse. And we're now starting to make a lot more videos. So we've entered the 21st century multimedia world. And I think that we can make some really nice and beautiful, inspiring shit. And that's one of the most important things now. We do need beauty, right? Tim Dillon, I mean, I forget last time he was talking about this, but he mentions, he makes a joke about Tucker Carlson saying the ugly architecture is about
It's meant to
demoralizing.
impress you. It's meant
Yeah,
to depress you. It's meant to
and like
hollow out the spirit.
Tucker Carlson is a good example of the deep state sort of new Middle Ages psyop, I would say, because while he says a lot of good things, then he throws in aliens, demonology, and a lot of it has
Let's take
these
another look at the Holocaust.
yeah, and just going full hard. Anytime there's an economic crisis, that's when like the Jew propaganda stuff, they really go hard on it. And you see it's a formula. Like,
It's a
okay, I'm always,
it's a blanket. It's you feel a little well, have we thought about maybe it was the Jews? That allows you to not think about NAFTA and the war and 20 years in Iraq.
it's a scapegoat.
Yeah.
And that's more at the level that it's like, wait, is this to make people feel good about the fact that maybe they were offline, they were checked out for a little while too long, and they were enjoying reaping the fruits of abundance without knowing where this stuff really came from,
Yeah.
which is often what happens. I'm reading the Stones of Venice by John Ruskin, and he just points out, he's all for Venice. He wants to restore like a Venice model of empire, and he thinks that the Renaissance, with its art and its innovation, it paved the way for commercialization. And he's very much, when he talks about Venice, though, he just points out that when Venice had reached its peak commercial power, it was already on the decline. And we could say the same thing about America, right? People think 1980s, they think like fucking DeLoreans and cocaine or whatever. And finally, it's like, well, no, that's when you started on your way out. Free
Yeah.
trade, liberalization, deindustrialization started to kick into gear.
CIA selling crack in the US, like you were starting to cut corners more.
Yeah, you're starting to cut all sorts of corners to mask the inflation, right? By increasingly just
The
outsourcing.
foundational rot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, these are all things to ponder as we think about strategically. Where there is no vision, the people perish. I think that regular everyday people should be able to think about like what is the vision for their nations, their civilizations. Otherwise, it's parochial. You're living in the moment.
So
It's
that's where I give Elon credit. Um is I when not when he interviewed Trump last summer on Twitter. No, and it wasn't Rogie, it was when Elon interviewed Trump. He does talk about it, and he's brought. And again, I'm sure there are personal interests in it, but I do actually agree with what he says about like other than jobs, borders, yeah, all well and good. But he goes, you have to wake up and have a reason to be excited to live, and like
right.
personally. I
Right.
have to like psych myself up sometimes about like the future of the like every year that goes by, I look back, I go, I could not have predicted how it would grow, the new people I would meet. And if I'm
Right.
having like a flat day or you just can't get it going, I always have to be like, I'm not just going through the motions and today I'm doing an episode with David. Like, no, this is a building block and what does tomorrow bring and what does the next year
Right.
bring? And when will I be able to get a dog one day or have a family one day? And like I have to psych myself up to go, no, 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 like life is beautiful. And
Right.
so even if you're not a rocket scientist, even if you're just fucking working at the Ford factory, I'm sure it was pretty fucking dope to hear Kennedy be like, "We're going to the moon." Like there does have to be something. Now,
Yeah.
does it affect your life? Probably absolutely the fuck not. But there is something about having the vision, just the sparkle. You got to look at it and go,
Well, it's huge. I mean, the
it's huge.
example
It's why the
it
seasons are so great, not just sports, but like actual. Like I'm sick of the cold now, and now I want to see the sun. And by August, I'll have my fill, and I'll go. I need the tundra back because I the mosquitoes need to go back to hell from whence they came. The seasons are good. I don't actually
right.
believe I'll be content this summer. I just want it to get hot, so I'll be hoping it's cold. But now
Right.
I'm cold, so I've kind of had a fuck enough of it. It's March, and I'm in a bath over the blanket. Like I'm kind of over it, right? It's you need to
As
have that.
Yeah, and I mean, just as you said, Kennedy and the space classic example, I think, is interview the kids. What did the kid want to be?
Want to be an
You know,
astronaut. Yeah.
want to be an engineer. You're gonna have
Yeah.
to study hard, Billy. You better be
You got
good
to
at
work
math.
hard. Well, then I think I can walk on the moon too.
Yeah, and this unleashed that unleashed, and the fact is, the irony is that all this stuff was shut down very quickly. Like it
Yeah.
was all scaled back much faster than people think, but the
Well,
effects
it's because we
were
found
so
aliens on the moon.
powerful. Sorry.
I said, well, it's
Even if we
because
didn't go to the moon, I'm
no, 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 I'm
comfortable
saying
with
no, no,
that.
no. I think we did go. I don't.
I don't know anymore, but I still know that doesn't, because there were the physical effects of NASA
Well, yeah, no, no,
and the
no, no. No, I
production
think
of.
we did go. And on our side, my reasoning is this: is the conspiracy should always be sexier than the truth. The
Right.
truth can't be that we went to the moon and then and faked it. No, the conspiracy should be like, no, we actually went and we actually went more times than we. Plus, Russia and China would have been a propaganda coup for them to say we didn't, but they tracked the telemetry. That's not as important to me.
Right. But
Is
that, and well, all that to say though, because yeah, some people will just get
but
stuck
even if
on
we didn't
that.
go, no, no, the effects were there.
Yeah, and just that hope. I mean, this is what
Yeah,
Tim Dillon or Ray Kump, he made a great observation when he was like, look, most civilization's kind of a scam.
yeah,
Like
it's to get us to
if
stop killing each other,
yeah, if you need to, spin a couple fables just to get people to stop killing each
or
other,
raping each
or
other's kids, then
bombing
yeah,
their neighbors, then hey, that's not a bad move. But then it's like, okay, so mindset does matter, right? Like culture does matter.
yeah,
And as Tim Dillon said in the last podcast, culture changes as a much slower level, right? It takes more time. That's why he's saying like the wasps and stuff, that they've been on their way out for a while. They were really one of the power centers in America, and still to some degree, but the new money, right? A lot of the new fortunes and stuff, they haven't come from these kind of families and circles. So yeah, things change. But you need that. You need some kind of idea that that's going to trickle into people's imaginations and spirits, which happens through culture. And there's no quick fix. So a lot of what I do, it's all kind of long game and long term, in that we're building a cultural mecca. I see my day to day as like, wait, how do we build a new cultural mecca for Western civilization? I'm like, well, I know that historically it often starts with literature. If you think of Homer and how that shaped Greek civilization, if you think of Dante and how that shaped the Renaissance, you often have, it starts at the imagination, right? It starts with something that's not real or that's seemingly just fantasy, but that's what plants the seeds for then people actually entertaining different ideas, conducting different thought experiments, and trying and doing new shit and creating new shit. So if you don't have that, which is all like a subjective process, right? It's not the most practical thing. It's people in their heads, it's ideas, it's thoughts. If you don't have a vibrant culture of that, the other stuff is going to ultimately down the road, the fruits are going to start rotting on the vine. You know, we have a lot of, I run into talented people, or I think a lot of people just are talented. You know, I feel I run into people every day and you talk to them, and I'm always like, what would this person be like in a Renaissance culture, right? In a forward thinking culture. And it's like a lot of the neurosis and the limiting thoughts that they have would probably not have the same effect. You know, they'd probably be a bit more dynamic and open, and
Mm.
it's all very subtle stuff. You know, it's not, it's not like, yeah, it's not night and day. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like people are all going to just ditch their corporate day jobs. But if you think of the spirit of innovation, or if you think of how Germany developed, became the most industrially advanced nation in Europe. It was really because there was this very intense spirit of science innovation. Think of all the composers
Mm.
that it's mostly German, right? If you think
Yeah.
like the ones
Bach,
that made
Beethoven.
it
Yeah.
that still survive, Schubert, Schumann, Mozart,
Yeah.
Beethoven, Brahms, that's not like an accident. And
No.
then the stupid explanation that I literally heard from a guy that I used to work with at a contemporary art gallery, who he studied anthropology. So his explanation was it was the weather, because it's colder in Germany, and people stay in, so they got more creative.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
And it's
What
like,
about the Irish? They're not
well,
composers. It's colder there. No, I'm agreeing with
yeah,
you.
they decided to just,
They're just
as Tim,
drunks.
yeah, as Tim Dillon, they decide to make more whiskey.
Yeah, they're drunks.
So yeah, like all these things that we're talking about, you can really take the long view, and we can, I think it's important that we revisit these longer story arcs, because that's how you understand shit. You
Yeah.
don't understand shit by like, what's Doge gonna do tomorrow? Are they gonna like fire what are they gonna, fire the bad park ranger? Or, like that's not where things are
The
happening.
funniest goddamn thing would be if this is actually like 4D chess. We know DARPA's got like a giant test range out in Yosemite, and firing park rangers is actually like a counter deep state move. They're taking down some fucking biolab in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Well,
Um,
yeah, that's
yeah, no,
God, God,
yeah,
God willing.
yeah, God willing. Yeah, no, it's I do. So another thing I look at is like I think it's a good observation is in a sense China did take the bait, but not the bait we wanted. They really did. It's like those memes where it's like be the American the Japanese think you are. And have you ever seen all those like anime propagandas?
Actually,
Where
no.
it's like every American is like 6'6", square jaw
Oh,
bodybuilder
okay.
with a machine gun, and it's like be the American they think you are.
Right.
China almost took that, excuse me, and imitated it, and now they've imitated the best facets of us, and primarily, hey, industrialized and built a military. Those are like the real kickers,
Right.
and because it's no longer this thing that you keep like an eye on, like the 70s or something. You're like, yeah, China will be a problem one day. No, it's like their own space station, hypersonic weapons. They have the largest and hottest tokamak fusion reactor. These are real. These are real like end game global geopolitical pieces. I think the silver lining would be it could kill the U.S., but if it doesn't, it will provide the fucking cardiac arrest clear that we wouldn't have gotten any other way.
The
Like
nitrous, is it nitrous?
nitrates for heart attacks or nitrous, well, no, they like accelerate. No, but where the fuck did?
Before the heart stops.
Yeah. Before the clear, like that might be it. Like we're never gonna, well, because we did 9/11, but let's say it was the Al Qaeda. That's never gonna give us. We're never actually gonna change. We look at that as a payday. We're like, oh fuck yeah, war in the Middle East, let's go. Versus if China and Russia start kind of throwing their dicks around, and we're like, wait, they actually have like they're not on goats. They have hypersonic weapons, nanotechnology,
Right.
deep. Oh wow, they're actually. If it doesn't kill the United States, and it very well could. If it doesn't, though, the immune response will save the United States in ways that no central planning ever could. Primarily,
Interesting.
it'll probably like it's no longer about we need an industrial base because that's going to get you in an office. Now it's like now you need like we're talking about the nucleus, the Pentagon. Now you need them coming in and they don't give a fuck about getting back into office. They're like, we need to start industrializing and building cars because we need to at any moment turn those into tank lines. But we got to do that very quietly. Hey, we're getting rid of the climate change stuff because we need to start fucking extracting fuel because we need to be able to jump up production 10,000% in a couple of weeks. That's what I think it is. And so
Yeah, well, that's the
things,
thing.
so things like Fusion coming online. I mean, what did Ben Rich, the CEO of Skunkworks, the fucking classified, hyper classified subsection of Lockheed Martin, say? Yeah, there exist technologies tied up in black programs that would take an act of God to be unleashed. But if they did, we would be amongst the stars. And he was saying that in the 90s, essentially saying like we've cracked fusion, we've cracked like quantum entanglement, but it's in these DARPA programs, and because of that, you'll never see them. The only
Right.
way, what would an act of God be? I don't know, Russia and China pairing up together.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it might be no,
Well,
no
that's
pun
what's
intended, but it might be the bullet whizzing by our collective ear. They're like, oh, it's real.
yeah, well, that's what's interesting because again, that's where this Malthusian disease. It's like, wait, so do we have or we suppressed a lot of more advanced technology because you didn't want the spillover effect, right? You didn't want these things to be integrated into the civilian economy because you know that at that point there are so many variables and unknowns in terms of how society will transform. So that way, when you hear the talk of they talk about science or historically, if you go back to the Renaissance or the early beginnings of science, the idea of science versus alchemy or magic, they're often almost used interchangeably because the idea is you introduce these things into the system and they radically transform everything. So the bad guys have this problem where they do know that there is this transformative effect whenever you introduce new principles, new physical principles, new scientific principles into society. And it's very hard to control. Like if you read all the higher level thinkers from Huxley to John Ruskin, who was the teacher, he was the mentor to Cecil Rhodes, who would create the Rhodes Trust and basically give the British Empire a second life. They were looking at the fact that the old British Empire was kind of waning because it was just this creaky maritime mercantile system. And then you had this young republic that was developing high speed rail, that these things were being imitated elsewhere. And your seemingly perfect or, unvanquishable system is suddenly being transcended by much minor players who have that spirit of innovation. They have the vigor, right, of a young sort of new generation. So it's all very tricky. But this is more interesting, right? At the end of the day, like we're not saying leave your corporate day job, right? But all this is actually way more interesting than the dog shit that is being peddled
Yes.
on Twitter and a lot of this fake alt media ecosystem, which is now it's bigger than the mainstream. So you can't say that, Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and all these things together. I mean, there's way more. Who's this other guy who Justin or he all of a sudden all his interviews it's just this guy in a chair and I think he was in the military before and
Oh, um,
he's interviewing
Ryan,
anyway.
Ryan,
Some,
Fucking Ryan,
we're
James,
thinking about the same guy, yeah.
James, John, James.
Yeah, so I mean, all of a sudden
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
doing
yeah.
like these like, oh wow,
He's right at the front
China's
now.
like all these guys are they've just created a new fake ecosystem of quote
Oh, Fox. See,
independent.
no, no, no. This is I. Maybe it wasn't you. I thought it was with you as somebody else. That they all run together now. But like, this is no different than this is just Mockingbird 2.0, where they own CNN, Fox News, CNBC, and you think it's independent. It's just the new. It's the new. Yeah, no, it wasn't with you. It was somebody else. But we were like, yeah, the CIA, the people that fucking like run the planet, like when social media came on in the early 2000s, they weren't just like, well, no one's watching mainstream news anymore, guys. Looks like we no, these are go-getters for better or worse. Well, a lot of them are satanic pedophiles, but you have to admire the innovation. And they're like, oh, they're not just gonna go home quietly. They went,
Right.
what's coming next? And we know through the Twitter files that the back door they had through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all that. But now even more, it's like, well, now we have independent podcasts. Yeah, well, I'm on Rumble. I'm banned from everything else. I also know who owns Rumble. It's Peter Thiel. Like I have no misconceptions about
Does
like,
he owns Rundle? Peter
or
Thiel
he's like
owns
the
Rundle?
biggest owner, or he's like the biggest co-owner, or he's like the
Takeover.
biggest funder, whatever the fuck. I have
Yeah.
no misconceptions about like when I see like Donald Trump Jr. and like Tucker Carlson on Rumble, I'm like, yeah, this isn't like the
Right.
resistance. I like them because I'm like I'm on there, but I know what it is. Like, so my point is no, everything you're saying is this is just the new thing where we go, well, this isn't Fox News. This is a podcast. This is Lex Friedman. This is Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh man,
exactly.
these are all infiltrated fronts. And I'm not saying that they're all just like card carrying CIA members, but I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of their guests are planted, whether they know it or not. And a lot of the algorithmic boosting is artificial. Let's just
And
be honest.
we can go even further, but again, we're saying this that like what we're talking about is more interesting, I'd say, than what you're getting from this
Which is why
mocking.
we are vanquished to the corners of obscurity.
Yeah, we're not as Raycom said, we're not pedophiles, so we're kind
Yeah,
of
we're not.
we
Yeah,
don't have a
we're
big
not paying your
podcast.
rake up. Yeah, well, no wonder my show's not successful. I'm not a pedophile.
But at the same, we could go further even though, because yeah, I don't want to cast aspersions and be the guy that's like it's all controlled and da da da. But like a lot of these guys have been, if you look at Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, they've been repatterned with
Yes.
psychedelics, right? And so you think MK Ultra, we said Project
Yeah.
Mockingbird.
Think it
Well,
just ended? No.
don't forget, throw into the mix MK Ultra, and you see that a lot of even the new right, the new religious right. There was and I know I don't like those labels, but we got to call it something. We got
Hmm,
to, you know,
I don't care.
Jules Evans. He has a very, very fascinating Substack where he's done a lot of research on psychedelics, and he's pro psychedelics, like big time. And he somehow, he's got all sorts of contradictions, but he's just pointing out how a lot of this, the new mystical or esoteric right. I mean, psychedelics have played a huge role in forming this. And he talks about this church, one of the Church of England's that has like is very big on ecstatic experiences and mystical spirituality, at least within the traditional Christian church and all that. And he's just talking about the founders, the owners of the Ark, Jordan Peterson's Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. They're all tied to this psychedelic stuff. Peterson's psychedelics. I've seen the amount of people who are supposedly having a spiritual epiphany who actually just like took mushrooms, took a heroic dose in Jordan Peterson's case, and all of a sudden slowly they become very political, right? They didn't really have a way of thinking about politics. They were into psychology and stuff. And now they got all these new ideas in their head and they're, Daily Wire and talk about a controlled, but they're
Yeah.
not, but yeah. So MK Ultra stuff, it's just been mainlined. So now
Yeah.
that it's so ubiquitous that people, okay, it's not Charles Manson with a swastika carved on his forehead. It's,
Back when people
somebody
had flair.
yeah, it's somebody talking about mystical
Yeah, I
experiences
mean,
and
I see it in the communities of the guys I interviewed. Sorry, I just interrupted you. But like lot of military guys, a lot of special forces guys. I mean, you see, and then I look at it and I go, well, it's never as easy as black and white. A lot of these guys legitimately are like, what is it, 22, 23 veterans a day commit suicide, and they're like psychedelics bring that number down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to say. Well, that's the guy. No, that might actually, it might be it like that too. Maybe it's a
Yeah, I'm
gray
not
area of
against that
like,
either.
no, no,
That's
and
not what
it's
I'm
helped me
saying.
enormously. I think you and I have talked about it. It's helped me
Yeah.
enormously, and I would still advocate it to people. It also doesn't mean that it's not being hijacked by the most evil people on the planet.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's like everything else, but that's why it's tricky because for example, Aldous Huxley's final novel, Island, I mean, it's basically a reimagined psychedelic version of Brave New World where people have willingly rejected industrial society, commercialism, and capitalism because they have a mystical faith based on moksha, the moksha medicine,
Hmm.
which is a psychedelic. So it's not just the soma that's there to dull you and to sort of, you know, mute whatever pain or suffering. It's actually something that gives you the illusion of having transcended, of having become fully transcended. So it gives you the ultimate illusion, which is that you've liberated yourself of all illusions. And now you have this relationship with the divine, which, if true, then yeah, you don't need, a Ferrari or, roller skates or whatever people are into, right? That was stupid, but I mean, they were
No,
big back in the day, right? So yeah, I think people have to be careful because if we're saying that there's still this Malthusian policy, this Club of Rome, death cult pagan stuff, at the end of the day, then here's the catch, right? They're promoting spirituality and mysticism, right? And this kind of anti materialism ethos. But is it because they're priming people to accept much lower living standards, especially as a lot of the wealth will now have to be siphoned off and redirected to beefing up the industrial and
that's a fucking real.
technological might
That's a
needed?
brilliant point. This
Yeah.
is just,
But this isn't new, right? Huxley wrote that
yeah, no,
novel in
but
1963.
no, but the way you're applying it now, take the fucking compliment. Is like it's just it's World Economic Forum from a different angle. It's not you will own nothing and be happy. Oh, fuck that commie. Instead, it's like it's Inception, right? This is your own thought. You had this thought. You took mushrooms and decided I'll own nothing and be happy. Yeah, and if that's then being pushed, and then also Jordan Peterson, Rogan, another explanation could be, and I'm with you where I tend to think that it's probably a centralized intelligence operation. It could also just be like you reach a certain number of years doing this, or just a certain number of years in your life, and you start going, "Fuck it, I'm just getting paid." It could just be that. It could
Well,
be.
there is that. No, there is
It
that.
could
That's
absolutely
you're
be
right.
like, "Yeah, I'll talk about fucking." Politics and transgenderism. I'm getting a paycheck and I'm leaving this shit. It could be, it could just be nihilism.
Well, I think Tim Dillon points that out, right? That's actually again when he talks about money as having this
Yeah.
anesthetizing effect. When you're on your way up and you're hustling and you really just got to grind, right? And you're
It's your
you're
best
full of that
2019,
vigor.
2020 Tim Dillon, never be repeated.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's a magic in everything, but it's like once you're established, and he's remarking because a lot of the rich people that he ends up interacting with, right? And he says like, I want a seat at the table and da da da. But he sees that yeah, a lot of them are checked out, and it's
Hmm.
like once they fall into the money and they're established, you don't have much to. Well, you have a lot to lose at
The
one
only
level,
thing you
but
want is to keep the anesthetizing drip going.
yeah, and so it's
Don't wake
clear
me up.
that a lot of the alternative media people, I mean, it's pretty lucrative, right? And if you think of Joe Rogan, man, I mean, now he's like entertaining having David Icke on, but yet I won't let this one go. yet he won't have like Whitney Webb on his show. And he
Yeah.
said because she's got some weird ideas, she says some weird things, and yet you're listening to people talking about
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
aliens, seeing aliens outside the window of their fighter jet, and David Icke,
It's
reptilians.
lizards.
Yeah,
I didn't
and
know
yet,
I didn't know he said that about Whitney Webb. That's a
yeah,
huge red
Tim Dillon.
flag.
No, Tim Dillon had brought it up.
I know
That's where
because he's had her on. I actually
yeah,
discovered her through him.
he mentioned her, and that Joan was like, yeah, but doesn't she says like some weird things, which is a pretty dirty way if you think about it. To that, that's how you kind of
It's one
it's
thing
the,
if
the
Tucker
thought
Carlson
terminating.
said it's some weird things.
It's a thought
Rogan's whole
terminating
thing is
cliche.
that it's weird. Rogan's whole thing was like, it's fun. He'll talk about pyramids, Bigfoot, and then have on like, Dr. Malone. That is a,
It's
I
a
didn't,
thought terminating cliche in the same
wow.
way that go read a
Wisdom.
book is.
Yeah. 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 No, or
You
it's, oh,
know,
yeah, what's the same way of saying, oh, he's alt-right or he's MAGA. It's like, that's not addressing the argument, right?
so it's weird. I don't have all the answers. I would like to know. I just bring her on, let her put her on the show, and I'm
That's fuck.
open. But
That's
and and
a
and
red
she black
flag,
pills on
man.
top of it. Like I'm not super. I think Whitney can black pill people, but
Yeah.
like she does so much good investigative work that I will never sort of
No.
I couldn't turn on her. She's just I don't want to say anything bad because she's done such great work, but that just stands out. Like that irks me. I'm like, wait, how can you talk about everything you're talking about? Then it's like, yeah, okay, maybe Joe Rogan is part of this controlled opposition, uh, thing that basically, a lot of these people have had been repatterned with psychedelics. They've made it. Now they're established. They're not that contrarian. They're not nearly as contrarian as they seem, or just nonchalant, right? He's just like, yeah, we're just talking about shit. We're just talking about whatever we want. We don't have a plan. And yet it's like, well, how come you're like dodging things that you'd think would be very potent, right? You're dodging some of the more potent things,
Mm.
and you're bringing on others who say a lot of nice things, but then are sketchy as fuck, like Tucker Carlson and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. But you can't have Whitney Webb on.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That's no,
That's weird.
that's very fucking weird. I would be okay with it if he did have her on, because he could be like, well, Elon's nefarious. But like, yeah, you know what? But he has on everyone, and he lets you decide. But the fact that he doesn't have on
Because
everyone,
she would just wreck. She that's what I like about, like, she just drops the information in a way that it's heavy. You're just like,
but
Christ,
but on
it's
the no,
not.
but on a deeper level, beyond her, if he had her on, if someone's critique is you had on Trump or you had on Musk and allowed them to peddle their misinfo, if he had on Whitney Webb, he would say, I have on everyone, and maybe some people are nefarious and some people aren't. That's for you to decide. That would be a reasonable argument. The fact that he's not letting her on, and she's not weird. It's just you can't be Rogan and have the whole. I started listening to him in 2011. You can't be the guy that starts with like the flashlight advertiser and the snowflakes on the screen and talk about the pyramids and not do so. That's a red flag to me. And yeah,
Yeah, and I'd say I'd point out, if we're going down the rabbit hole there, like what happened to Alex Jones?
yeah,
He all of a sudden he's like clean cut, and he's been sort of absorbed into the cyborg technate system, and like he's big, he's mainstream pretty much.
yeah,
And so a lot of these people that seemed like maybe they were outside and had their more independent operations, and like for Alex Jones, God bless. I mean, maybe he was just uh, sort of spiritually, whittled down, right? Like so much they went after him so much
need a
that.
break.
And I think about the same thing with Trump, in that the media was truly losing its head, right, in 2016. Like there was something truly, there was genuine fear you could see, in
Anaphylaxis.
hysteria. And this time around, it was so smooth, baby. And Mika Brzezinski and
Yeah,
Morning Joe, they're like, yeah, we went to go see the president Mar-a-Lago. We had some coffee, and we had a
this
good chat, and everybody's on a first name, and it's like everybody's
dude.
happy, and uh It's just it's weird.
Dude, the
You know,
way
that's weird.
the way you're bringing this, because Alex Jones, right? It's in 2016. I remember, yeah, when he like for episode 9/11, people are like, you know, the left, the right doesn't want to talk about the CIA doing 9/11, and like the left wants to talk about maybe it was an inside job, and they're like, and then you have Alex Jones talking about animal human hybrids. Yeah, where is that like total? There should be like left, right, Elon versus Kamala Harris, and then there should be Alex Jones talking about like they're using CERN to crack open the fabric of reality and bring in demons from the ninth dimension. And you're right, he is being folded. And it could be, let's be sympathetic or empathetic. Could be that it just breaks you after a while, which is, hey, fair. We can all only take so much. That's fair. But what you're saying about how they're bringing them all, kind of bringing them in from the cold, and then because it is very true, we're not, and I have former like Army Intel guys talk about this all the time. They're like, we're not seeing 2016. The way you just said it, though, Mika Brzezinski and Morning Joe and going down there, it just had this moment of like connection for me where I went like, oh, we're going to war with China. That's the only reason everyone's sitting at the table.
Right. Well,
We're
that's
going to fucking war. That's the only, we don't get together and have
right.
fun because we're nice people. There's a mutual
And
interest.
what's
Oh,
crazy as well
fuck.
is, yeah, well,
Oh,
you do see,
shit.
yeah, trying to rehabilitate the image of the military. Like, is that why they want to make people healthy again, so that they can, so that all the young people can go, like, fight actual, like, a real war in China? Because
There's white men in military commercials now.
you're gonna
That's how
need,
you
yeah.
know it's fucked.
But the only thing with that is, I think the flip side is that the main strategy for China to avoid the war is really, if they can clearly demonstrate that the US will lose in a brutal way, that's ultimately the best, uh, that's the best way to stop a war, actually. And so, China's flexing a lot of its stuff, but a lot of that likely has to do with the fact that, this is our war. Bannon was talking about this on the Tim podcast, that, if they have to fight the war, in their mind they've already lost, in the sense that the whole art of war is
Yeah,
not
it's to
fighting war.
yeah. And if
And
you do,
so
it's to win it before it starts.
if the technique can't really get its shit together as it would like, at least in the near term, then that throws everything off. So yeah, is war with China, again, Bannon, again, Bannon is fucking crazy, like hard gun ho for trying to restore the
Westphalia.
well, I mean, he doesn't say he's for the unipolar, but he does want to go to war with China. Like, he's one of the most aggressive. But now it's like, you don't want to be stupid about it. So you do. It's like the elites are having to put their thinking caps back on,
Yeah.
and so you're seeing some interesting and more nuanced analyses and talking points. But yeah, war with China, that's really the thing. But that's crazy. Like, that's crazier than everything up until this moment. Like, all the other wars, which we say were a disaster or crazy, Iraq, Syria, whatever,
We made a lot of
Kuwait.
money and a lot of new
It's
technology on.
it's
This
it's
one's real.
nothing. It's nothing compared to being like, yeah, we're gonna fight China, but hence you got a really heavy anti-communist trope as well, which is just like, wait, so we're going back to like 1960s Cold War,
None of
just
it
like the
has to
Jew
make sense, dude.
paranoia.
None of
We're
it
going
has to
back to
make
Jew.
sense.
We're going back to Jew paranoia and like better red than dead anti-commie propaganda, and it's like nobody's like, wait, where have I heard this before? Meanwhile, the technate is,
It's the
it's
arch
been looting everything for the last
it's the archaic revival. Except
right,
unlike how Terence McKenna said it, where in the 1700s they reached back 2,000 years and took the Greco-Roman model and hung their hat on. We're doing an archaic revival and we're just looking back to like the 1930s. We're going, worked for grandpa,
right,
gonna work now. And
right.
like that's not necessarily true, but so no, it's what Tim said at the end of the recent one about the fucking the high stakes game, the plane crash. He goes,
Right.
We need to go back to fighting enemies that aren't real that we've probably created. He's like, war with China. What the fuck are you talking about? But that does make me think. I think the people in charge are crazy, but I don't think they're stupid. I think they're crazy and evil. I don't think they're stupid, which then tells me if they're putting this piece on the board, it's because we have to. It's because they're looking at the rot, the lack of industry, the lack of everything. They're going, we're on the lifeline. We're throwing the Hail Mary. You don't want to throw a Hail Mary, but it is an option. And right now it's the option. And it's like, and it could be that we're looking at it and we're going, no, 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 China is a formidable enemy. Right now, our supercomputers still say there's a whatever, a 61% chance we win. By 2030, that number might fall to 20%. So it might be we're going, the window's now.
Well, the super no, but the supercomputers for the record, actually, the supercomputers have, I think it was 6 out of 6 times shown that they lose. So
China?
that's why they like China wins. There's no the scenarios are not right now
Well,
in
then right
favor.
now we're going in 2030, it's going to be 60 out of 60, 6 out of
So
6. I'm not
it's
saying it's rational. I'm saying we're going for it.
yeah, but I think we can appreciate therefore that rather than all this black pilling or conspiracy QAnon grade stuff where everything is sort of decided one way or another, it's that there is desperation, truly, when the smarter bad guys look at the situation on the ground, they're like, wow, we have fucked up so hard. And so that's probably where, there was some agreement and Trump was seen as you needed some managerial change. Like you needed a managerial revolution, if you will. And so, yeah, now they're hustling, and it's still to be seen what will happen. But the most likely factor in preventing a war is China sort of demonstrating that there's no chance that the technate would win. So I think that's actually the reality, and that's more. But then it's like, wait, you see that what? So they're doing certain things that are good, but they're doing them for the wrong reasons. And the conversation we want to have is, well, yeah, we should be reviving our industry. Well, yeah, we should be revitalizing farming and the land and getting all the chemicals out of our food. Like that's the real thing. But we just need to.
I say take the win. I don't care why we're doing it.
Well, there you go. No, well, that's history for you, and
I
the
thought that's a growing up moment. Hey,
the universe, yeah, the universe has a sense of humor. I'll go as far as that. So yeah,
it
God bless.
it
And the chemicals. I was in Rome for 2 weeks, and I lost weight without doing exercise, eating pasta and pastries, and I looked it up. Right, just like yourself, I go to the gym regularly and stuff, and like I see if I've lost like 2 pounds. Like I know
yeah,
it.
no, no, I
I
track
can.
it. Yeah, I track it weekly.
So and I was like, so what is it? So I just quickly I was eating pasta and stuff. So I just wrote in why can I eat pasta in Europe but not America? And doctor just breaks it down. Like this isn't rocket science. He says that in America, in North
Linoleic
America,
acid
we
and
have the enriched flour that has like iron and vitamin B stuff. And he just said it's a lot heavier, it's a lot harder on the system. Iron has an oxidizing effect as well on the body. So it prevents it if you have swelling or if you have inflammation, it sort of aggravates that. And yeah, I was always bloated when I'm eating regular pasta or God forbid like pizza. Like it'll I feel like I ate like 3 turkey dinners kind of thing. So I
Mhm.
know, but nothing in Italy. So yeah, please remove the chemicals so that I can eat a fucking pizza like I could, when I was like 15, without feeling infirm for half the day.
I say take the win. You know, it's good to sleep well and to diet and to exercise. I diet and exercise and practice personal hygiene so much more when I'm talking to a girl, just
Right,
so I hate myself less. Is it a
right,
good reason to? No, I should do it because I love myself. Why
right.
am I actually gonna do it? Because I have a crush on that girl. I'm trying to get laid.
That's
I just
probably the good title for the show. take the win.
Take the win. No, 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 take the win. I mean, legitimately though. I mean, like, why do I live by myself. Why do I take a shower and shave? Because I have a 4K camera. I don't want to look like shit.
right,
It's not for the right reasons. Take the fucking reasons. And you know what, man? If China Rising makes us, if we boot up
right.
domestic production and domestic jobs and we secure our border not because we should, but because we don't want Chinese cells coming over, I kind of don't fucking care. Get
Yeah,
it
and
done.
God
We
bless.
get it fucking done.
Right,
And you know, I think back to what you're saying about, the computers say we lose to China, and it makes me think of, the first A bomb, July 16th, 1945, Alamogordo. And they thought there was a 10% chance it would create a runaway fission reactor. The fission would turn to fusion and would ignite the entire world's atmosphere. There's a 10% chance of that. And they said send it. That tells me that when it comes down to existential crisis, for better or worse, the US military nucleus, they stop thinking and go, yeah, just fucking kill them.
right.
And it's like a primal, I don't care if I die, I'd
Well,
rather
that's
die
yeah.
than lose. That
Animal
might
cornered,
be,
right?
yeah. Hey, the supercomputers say we lose 10 out of 10 times. You just say Trump just going, that computer's gay. Like, it
Right,
doesn't matter. It
right,
doesn't fucking matter. And now that could end all life on Earth. I'm not saying that it won't. You might have the deep entrenched power structure, like the people behind the Rothschilds, just going, we kind of fucked up. We are now, there is no outcome in which we don't go to war with China.
right.
Fuck
Yeah,
it.
no, I mean that's
Put Trump in. He might just,
yeah. So
I hate him. He's a womanizer, but he's the best quarterback we have.
right. Yeah, well, hey, and that's the thing. So what's going to happen? I mean, at the end of the day, a takeaway though is I think it's undecided, which is way more interesting, right? It's way more interesting than even when Whitney's like technocracy, like here are all the things they're putting into place and like genetic CRISPR and whatnot,
Yeah.
and it's like you listen to that and you're like, oh wow, we're all fucked, and it's like, well, no, actually, I think we're not all
It's
fucked,
far
and
more interesting
actually
right
it's
now.
things are way so level up,
The
ladies and gentlemen, like put down that donut as Tim Dillon and his Elaine Maxwell speech, which was great. Put down the donut, fatty, and level up because yeah, maybe it will all crash and burn, and it'll be like whichever one of the Apollos burnt up in the atmosphere or blew
blew up
up
Apollo
before it.
1. It just lit on fire on the ground.
Yeah, so maybe that's what will happen as soon as the war kicks
But
off.
but
Or,
it could
I
be
I
13.
I can think back to my younger self and I was into conspiracy stuff very early on. So like I didn't do things that in hindsight I should have from like be more investor savvy, or even
I
like
didn't go to prom. I was reading CIA: A Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner.
okay, well, yeah, or even Bitcoin. Everybody's got their Bitcoin story, of course. Where it's like, wait, I was gonna buy it, but then I was like, that's just speculation. But it's like society's been running on this stuff. You can go. It doesn't matter which empire. Like it's always
Yeah.
been a thing. So you're gonna say that you're just gonna not partake in the
You be a
thing.
cuck. You be a
Yeah.
faggot.
So like we what's the saying? Expect the prepare for the worst.
Yeah,
Expect the
hope
worst. Prepare for the
the
worst.
worst.
Expect the
Yeah,
best.
hope for the best. Again, well, I was gonna say no. Yeah, no. The guaranteed outcome was like this just slow entropic decay as the Python or the Anaconda tightened its grip, which is like there's slowly we move into like a vaccine passport, totalitarian, all money is tracked, bio digital convergence, open
Yeah.
air prison, just like a slow
Yeah.
1984. The other outcome is like this weird kind of like Teddy Rooseveltian revival of American empire. We're taking Canada and we're gonna fuck up China. And it's like, is that
Right.
ideal? No. But this one has an option of like, if you're on the 110th story of the World Trade Center and you're just gonna burn to death. If you're on the 20th floor, You might survive if you jump. You might. You might hit a truck. You never know.
Right.
You might. And it's not great, but I'll take that over being above the impact zone. So
Right.
that's kind of I'm with you. That's where I look at it is like, this isn't an ideal outcome, but the other one was a guaranteed death. We were getting in the cell, we were locking the door, we were giving it to Klaus Schwab, putting the chip in our head, and it was just a guaranteed death. Versus this one's like, it might be death, but there's some wiggle room.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. There's some wiggle room. And yeah, so
Take the win.
and I mean, has it ever really not been that? You know what I mean? When we, again,
Well, no,
we
no,
don't want
that's
to
the other thing is it's always been this
we
forever.
don't my whole shtick is against like this romanticizing of the past. And it's like, yeah, was it really I think a lot of things are open now that weren't before, you know, especially the kind of stuff that I do, literature, starting your own publication, you know, writing your own books. Like you don't need to go through all the gatekeeping shit. But the difference now, which is the thing that I'm sort of catching up on with our multimedia stuff, is you know Tim Dillon said you can't just. It's like if you want to be a comedian and the ones who are just like doing their gigs at bars and stuff, but they don't have any socials. Like
Yeah.
you got to have socials, you got to do all this stuff, you got to do the podcasts and interviews. So you got to wear way more hats now than before. It's just like I'm a writer, I'm, you know, here's my book and everything else is kind of, you know, downstream. Now it's like spectrum. So it's
Debbie broke up.
right for 99% of people. You know, maybe there's some wiggle room to wiggle your way up or, you know, wiggle your way out of, you know, hard times. So, yeah, I mean, nothing new under the sun at the end of the
No,
day.
and we'll wrap it up with again Raymond Kump. And it's funny having listened to Ray kind of like from whenever I started was 2018, 2019, but the archives go back to like 2016 versus like now. He talks about he's like, I used to be he was always about like Murray Rothbard, like Austrian School of Economics, like smart money supply. And now he goes, now I look at it and I go, yeah, what kind of fucking cuck am I? He's like, we die one day. We're the empire. Get cheap credit. Buy fucking Litecoin. Like, this is all it's ever been. Like, not
Right.
we were never gonna do smart money. What are you fucking retarded?
Right.
Like, it's like no, we fucking play the game. Because if you
Right.
don't, someone else will. And that's all
Yeah.
human history's ever been. Is like, so that's the thing. Is like we're kind of you and I are having this like epiphany of like, no, let's not slowly die. Let's go to war with China. Maybe we have a way out. We're peeking behind the curtain, and this is what it's always been in the Pentagon. This is what it
Right.
was on September 10th. Like, so are we really doing it? They're like, yeah, we have no other option. We don't have the
Right.
Soviet Union anymore. It's always been juggling. It's always been
Just
improv.
just raw dogging history.
That's all it's ever fucking been. And then in hindsight, what you do is then you wrap it up in a bow, and then that's the agreed upon lie.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
That's
when I look back at like just the 5 years of doing this show, it all like makes sense in hindsight. All the pieces fall into place. I look at the people I meet, the discussions we have, the connections I make, and the introductions that get done, and it all just all the gears just in perfect synchronicity, and it builds it up to where it is right now. And if I look at it right now, I go, I have no idea what the next month of this show looks like. I don't know how it's gonna make money. I have like a loose idea, but most of it's just praying. Like I have no idea where the fuck it goes. But this is all it's ever been. And yet I look back after 5 years and go, hey, it all worked out just absolutely perfect. I mean, yeah, I couldn't have planned it. It just
right.
like a zipper, zip, just finishes.
Right.
And I understand, but at every single moment, I always thought it was at the end. And so
Right.
if I feel a little like schizophrenic, like what the fuck am I gonna do with this thing? Like take solace in the fact that it's always been the end. It's always been Russian roulette.
Right.
So I don't know.
Amen.
Amen.
And I mean, I think we're kind of ending on a very Tim Dillon-esque note, right? Where like Tim Dillon, he says, right, I'm a cynic. You know, he assumes most people are lying when he's taught. He's not a starry-eyed idealist, but you need a bit of that if you're actually going to get shit done, because you can't let everything sort of everything that crosses your path, if it takes your attention or zaps your spiritual energy or your vigor or your enthusiasm, it's like, or your just worry and anxiety, like it's enough, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great note to end on. And we're just got to raw dog it. And it's been done before.
You just gotta sit
It's
in a
been done
rocking.
before.
You just gotta sit in a rocking chair, drinking red wine out of a Burger King cup, and if anyone tries to burst your bubble, you just say, "Hey, life in the big city."
Right on.
All right, brother.
There you
Yo,
go.
let's wrap this up. Everybody, please go in the description. Please go follow David on everything and all that good shit. I'll send you this episode, and dude, as always, fantastic catching up, and you do make me think, and I appreciate that about you. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, let's stay in touch, and we'll
Yeah,
keep it up.
of course. All right, brother. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
your time.
sir.